Today we are going to show you how to engrave a simple label on our Vision VE 810 engraver. First thing we need to do is to select the correct material, and as an example we have black material with a white backing. The thickness of the material here, where is mainly white, will be the colour of the text that comes through when you engrave it. So we've now got the correct material. We need to cut it to size. The cutting process is very simple. Make sure you use your square. Select the appropriate size. In this case I'm going to make a label that is about 5 centimeters high, and we'll just one like that. You've scored it. Now just come back to here. That's easy enough to cut the material. We then apply adhesive to the back of it. Just a little bit of adhesive. Cut 3/4 of the way through the tape. And then peel the tape off, and you'll leave the adhesive behind, the double-sided tape. So repeat the process. We have now 2 pieces of adhesive to stop the label from rotating like that when it's been engraved. Peel the backing or the protective film off the front of the material and discard that, and locate the label at the origin 00 with a bit of overhang so that you can go to the 0 point without running out of label material. Okay, turn the machine on and turn the computer on. Over here it's the top switch and the front switch on there on the computer. So this will take a bit of a process, so we'll pause the video at this point.
Where you go.
Okay, now that the machine is started up and the computer is ready to run the Vision software, we can set the working height of the machine prior to running the software. In order to do that, we bring the XY speed up to max. Don't worry about the spindle speed, although I typically run it about there. We need to manoeuvre the table above a solid piece of aluminium in here, and then drive this down until this just stops to this stops moving. And that you can see that the two continue on. So you just need to get to the point where it stops. Then we set our surface down here. Oh, prior to that, make sure you're on number 5 in there. Sorry, my mistake there. So we now set our surface. It will raise a little bit. We want to raise it a bit further with the Z key so that we have enough clearance to move the tooling left and right and up and down without scoring the surface of the material. We then set the lift height by pressing set surface again. Press home cancel. Returns back to there. Now we can put our cutter in. Select your cutter appropriately to what you're going to be doing, whether it be a thin or a fat cutter or a really fat cutter. They do have different profiles on their tips. It's very hard to tell the difference. Okay, so we're going to use the fat one in this case. Left hand thread. So to install it, hold the spindle with one finger, press it in until you get to the bottom, and then just nip it up gently. The machine is now ready to accept a program or a label. So we now work into the software over here. We start up the Vision software, and we now select new label, which is up here. We have the label dimensions over here. So So we'll highlight the plate width, which is going to be, in this case, let's make this 120 wide, and we said we were going to make that 5 centimeters, which is 50 high because it's millimeters. Come down to our line height here, that is the text height. So if we wanted a character that was 10 millimeters high, we would put 10 millimeters there, and use your arrow keys on the keyboard to maneuver around this. The baseline here is, if you have a look at this image over here, the baseline is from the top of the label to the bottom of the text. So we've got a 10 millimeter high item, and we now want to determine where on the label height wise it sits. So if we wanted that to be 30 mils, you'd have a 20 millimeter gap above the label, above the text I should say. So we will put in here, if we want to do it centered, the easiest way to do a centered one is to take the plate height and the line height, add them together, 60, and then divide by 2. So that's 30 mils for that, will give us a balanced centered height. We now put our text in here, and you'll see as we're typing down here the text will start to show. So I'm going to put in here test label for demo, and because this is longer than the label width here, we have got condensation happening. We can do a justification left, center, right. Mostly we use center. We can set the left margins and right margins. On smaller labels, you can go down to about 2 millimeters there. But because we've got condensation here, this is effectively squashing up to fit inside the length of the label. We can select the font that we're using here, and in some cases we want to use the Universe 55 for a multi-pass. And it makes it just a little bit like a bold text. Up on the top here, at the blue boxes, we can get a preview of what the label looks like. And you can see that is showing multi-passed in there. If we take that font back again to just Gothic, and go back to our, it's a single pass on the text. So I'm going to select multi-pass to make it look nice. And at that stage we are ready to send that to our engraver. Down on the keyboard there is a list of functions, and to send it we press F9, which is execute our layout. F9 brings up our layout screen. Generally the only two areas you will do here is to use your offsets. What that does is to change the origin point so that you can locate a label somewhere else on the sheet. For example, if you've done a label at 00 origin and wanted to place another label next to it, you would alter the origin point here so it didn't overlap your existing label. Click on OK, and nothing happens apart from this start button flashing. It's waiting for you to press the start. So you make sure everything's ready to go. If you're checking that the cutter depth is at 5, just feel underneath there gently and you'll feel just a little protrusion of the cutter. It really is very, very minor. If it's quite large, you've got this set either one turn wrong or not. You now hit the start button.
What's that?
Yep. Okay, we now have a completed label, and we did miss one step in amongst all of that. And if you wanted to scribe a border around there for ease of cutting, we should have altered that in the software up here under options, multiples, and put a score between plates, which then gives us a cut of the dimensions of the plate. Makes it a lot easier when you're actually coming to trim the plate up later on. We generally put a pause in there because what we want to do is to adjust the height of the cutter to cut a lot deeper before we score around the plate. And we'll redo this and we'll get back to the same point again and then commence the recording of how to do the adjustment.
Yep.
Okay, having completed our label with the border, we now take our adjustment point here and rotate it anti-clockwise a full turn plus 5. These increments are in thousandths of an inch, American machine unfortunately. The reason I put it on 10 is that you can very quickly ascertain whether you're on a cut depth or an engraved depth. Now at this stage we want to slow down the XY speed so you don't rip through the label because we're making a heavy cut, so we bring it back to about there. And over here you can see the start is flashing ready for you to do your input. So we'll now do that. Hold the table with a bit of pressure because this machine occasionally does stick. Remember to return this back to your 5, which is a full turn less 5, so that it's ready to engrave again. Otherwise you'll end up with a very deep engraved label for the next label. At this stage we can pull that label off the table, roll your thumb over the tape to remove the tape in both cases, and then score around the label with your knife. Just put your knife into the groove. One label.